Welcome to the Autism Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Janeen Hershkovitz, and it's my goal to help you create a more peaceful home while living with autistic and neurodivergent loved ones. Each episode, we focus on a different room in the house and help you create a peace plan for your home. So let's get started. Hey friends, thanks for joining me today. Today we're talking about finding your people and why community is so important for autism parents. If you're a parent of an autistic child and you've ever felt alone in this, like your life doesn't quite fit in the spaces where you used to belong, this episode's for you. So parenting an autistic child can change your world in ways that nobody really prepares you for. And often one of the biggest changes is how isolated that parents begin to feel. So today I want to talk about why community matters so much for autism parents and what it means to find your people. So let's start with why isolation is so common. Most autism parents don't choose to be isolated. It happens slowly. Plans get harder to keep. Conversations start to feel heavier. And the energy that it takes to explain your child, your choices, or your needs becomes exhausting. So over time, many parents start pulling back, not because they don't want connection, but because connection starts to feel like everything else. It starts to feel like work. So if this has been your experience, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a natural response to living in a world that wasn't designed with your family in mind. So I want to share something personal here because this is something I've seen again and again, both professionally and in real life. I remember a period of time when I realized how carefully I was choosing my words in parent spaces with other parents. I was constantly scanning, is it safe to say this? Will I be judged if I explain this? Do I even have the energy to explain it all? And what I noticed was that it wasn't the lack of people around me that felt hard, it was the lack of understanding. When I finally found spaces where autism didn't need to be justified or defended, where complexity was assumed instead of questioned, I started to feel my body relax. I didn't need to over-explain and I didn't need to prove anything. And that experience deeply shaped how I think about community now because it made something really clear. Being around people who get it changes everything. So when we talk about community, we often picture something big or busy, but meaningful community is usually much smaller and quieter than that. Community is the feeling that you don't have to explain everything. It's being around people who understand the context of your life without needing a lot of details. It could be one person. It could be an online space. It might be a place where you don't even talk very much, where you just listen. The right community should feel grounding for you and not draining. You have enough to deal with on a daily basis. So let's talk about one of the most important aspects of community, which is the emotional impact of being understood. There is a real nervous system benefit to being around people who understand autism, not just intellectually, but emotionally. When you're understood, your body doesn't have to stay on high alert. You don't have to brace yourself. You don't have to minimize how hard things can be. That kind of understanding reduces shame, and shame is something that we all carry quietly. If you've listened to my podcast for a while, then you've heard me talk about my friend JC, who I've known for over 20 years now. She has a son with Down syndrome, and she lived around the corner from me, and our kids played together, grew up together, and she became a lifeline. I think it's fair to say that our friendship became a lifeline for each other because of the understanding that comes from lived experience. While we learned a lot about each other's kids and how they struggled, the thing that bonded us was not the actual details of the experience being the same, but rather the shared empathy that came from our emotional experience and resilience just as moms. we would be able to call each other, in the middle of the night if we had to. We would be able to text each other a quick, help, I'm I'm drowning. And we would always meet each other where we were. So even just having that one friendship, which is really the only lifeline that I felt like I had for several years, that can make such a difference. And so shout out to my friend JC, my BFF, who is now relocated in another state, so we don't get to see each other as much. But even if it's a text relationship with a friend, that's super important as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is shared wisdom and normalization. So, community also offers something incredibly practical: shared experience. There is a relief in hearing another parent say, "We've dealt with that too." That kind of normalization helps parents trust themselves again. It reminds you that you're not failing, that you're responding to real challenges. Professional guidance matters, but lived experience helps parents feel less alone while they're figuring things out. Let's also talk about community as burnout protection, right? We talk about our kids experiencing burnout, but as their parent, we experience burnout too. So we have to remember that this is a long road. You've heard me say before that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not a short season, it's a lifetime. And long roads like this require support. Isolation can accelerate the burnout. Connection can slow it down. Community doesn't remove the stress, but it makes the stress just a little bit more manageable. And it gives parents a place to land emotionally. As a psychotherapist, I've led parent support groups that are topic based, educationally based, like how to have a productive IEP meeting or what behavioral interventions work best. But at the end of the day, after collecting feedback for about 2 decades, a few things started to become clear. A strong community means connecting on an emotional level, more so than even an educational level. Most of the women that were in my mom's groups reported not particularly liking those sessions where we did educational things and liking much more that connection, talking about lived experiences. So that is what we've curated our in-person group around, just based on that feedback. So, learning about topics can be helpful, but the connections made in these groups are astounding. And it makes me so happy when I hear years and years later that some of the women that attended these groups have formed lifelong friendships. And it's impacted them in ways that they've never expected. So I also want to zoom in. I also want to zoom out for a moment, because this conversation isn't just happening in autism spaces. Across the country right now, we're seeing something really important. People are turning toward community again. And in times of uncertainty and stress and change, humans naturally look for connection. We look for neighbors, shared spaces, and people who understand what it feels like to live in this moment. We're seeing parents supporting other parents, communities organizing care for one another, and people realizing that individual strength isn't enough because it was never supposed to be. Autism parents have been living this reality for a really long time. You already know what it means to rely on others, to share resources, and to lean into collective wisdom. So when we talk about community for autism parents, we're not talking about a trend. We're talking about something deeply human and deeply necessary. Community is how people survive hard seasons. It's how your nervous system settles. It's how families stay resilient over time. And for autism parents who are already navigating so much, this return to community isn't just helpful, it's protective. So I also want to acknowledge when community can feel complicated. So many of us parents are exhausted. If you're exhausted, I see you. I understand. I understand the judgments and the misunderstood feelings that we often have. Others simply don't always have the capacity to show up in the big ways that we need them to. So if that's you, hear this. You don't have to participate perfectly for community to matter. Quiet presence counts. Observing counts. Leaving spaces that don't feel safe counts. So finding your people, which I talk about a lot, isn't about forcing a connection. It's about noticing, and noticing when you feel a little less guarded. So we're going to tune in to our own nervous system, right? We talk about our nervous system of our kids all the time and how to help them regulate. Let's talk about our nervous systems. And when you just shift for a moment and notice what's happening in your body, you can figure out who you feel connected with, who you feel comfortable with, and who you feel guarded around. The people that help your nervous system settle, that you feel more comfortable and less guarded around, those might be your people. So I also want to remind you, you don't need a crowd of people to benefit from community. When you're choosing spaces that respect your child, your parenting, and your nervous system, you have the support that you need to feel less alone. But so many of us spend time with people out of guilt or necessity. And I get it, some of those people you might be related to, you might need to spend time with. Keep them in that box of this is family. They may or may not be part of your community. They may or may not be part of your inner circle. But identify for yourself, maybe even write them down, the people that you consider safe people in your life. So if you're not able to jump into any kind of community, whether it be online or in person or otherwise, that's okay too. It might not be your jam. You might feel better one-on-one. For the longest time, my friend JC and I were each other's support system. And we helped each other identify more supports so that we could kind of strengthen that muscle, so to speak. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to be in community with each other. And I also want to share something with you gently, no pressure. One of the reasons that I have been creating our Patreon community was because I kept seeing how much autism parents needed spaces that felt safe, affirming, and most important, low pressure. So it's not about showing up perfectly or participating constantly. It's about having access to the people who understand the landscape that you're living in. If you are looking for a place where you don't have to explain your child, defend your choices, carry everything by yourself, community is an option. And we are in the process of building that community on our Patreon page. And if now is not the right time, that's okay too, because just knowing that these spaces exist can be enough for whenever you need them. So if you're listening to me today and realizing how much you've been carrying alone, let this be your reminder that you were never meant to do this by yourself. There are other parents walking similar paths, parents who understand the complexity, the love, and the exhaustion. We need to be able to hold all of those things at the same time. Finding people doesn't fix everything, but it can change how heavy the things feel that you're carrying. So check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/autismblueprint. There's absolutely no pressure. We have a free community there, which we're moving from the Facebook page that we had. The Facebook page will still be there for a while, guys. Don't worry. But we are in the process of moving people from that page over to our Patreon. And here's why. I don't want people messing with our community. I don't want algorithms to affect the support that you get. So there is a free option in Patreon where you can come in and see some of our basic chats about the episodes and questions that I'm posing. And then there is an opportunity for paid things where we're going to have more and more live Q&As and webinars and things like that that will cover more of the educational pieces. So I would love to hear in the comments what it is that you're looking for in your support. What is missing in the community support that you need? And be specific, because we're going to try to create it. So until next time, be kind to each other. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Take care. The information in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional.